And in today's session, we're going to be talking about maintaining properties and why you should be looking at this for the long term and not just the short term. Before we go into that, just want to mention that this is sponsored by the Property Investor app, which is the UK's first property investment platform, which showcases all kinds of deals all over the UK. Whether you're looking for that below market value deal, that rent to rent deal, that lease option deal, we've got them all on the Property Investor app. So go and check us out. There's two ways to do this. You can either go to the website, which is propertyinvestораpp.co.uk, or if you've got a smartphone, go to the App Store, type in Property Investor and download it from there. Now let's get straight into this. When you purchase a property, I'd like to think that you're going to play the long-term game unless you're looking to develop the property and sell it on for a capital gain, which in essence could be a short-term strategy. Now, this has been born from a topic that I actually saw on Facebook in one of the property forums, and I was actually quite disgusted by it, if I'm honest. So one of the Facebook group moderators put in his group and he said, guys, just so that you know, here's a template for a message that I sent out to all my tenants, especially in the heat wave that we've got coming up, just letting them know just to keep them safe, well and happy, tell them to keep hydrated, make sure that everything's okay. And, there were two ways of looking at this as a message. And more important, we're then going to go on to maintenance in a second. So the group is quite a large group. There's, 20, maybe 30,000 people in this group. And I was disgusted, if I'm honest, at the responses that this guy was getting for simply putting out what I would have considered a message of well-being. And a lot of the messages or the responses that were coming back was, are you babysitting your tenants? Why are you telling them this? Are they not adults? Can they not think for themselves? Are you going to go around and start fanning them in a minute? Are you going to go around and start feeding them drinks? Are you going to make sure there's water in the taps? And when I read these responses, I kind of felt that the people that had put these responses up had kind of lost touch with reality. And the reason why I say this is because you've got to remember that the people living in these properties are paying for your lifestyle. The people living in these properties are your customers. And if you don't treat them or offer a level of service, and this is the best way of describing it as saying that if you don't offer a level of service, ultimately they've got so much choice that they can choose to go somewhere else. They have the ability, and with the HMO market in particular, there's so much choice out there, there's so much competition out there. You're not the only landlord. And therefore, if you've not upped your game yet in the last few years, the tenant has the ability to go off and find alternative to the same standard, if not better than what they've got. And, regardless whether you like it or not, there is price war and price competition for rooms in locations. So definitely don't take it for granted that just because they're stopping with you, they're putting up with you. I've come across multiple tenants, and we do, admittedly, we take properties or we take tenants off other landlords because of the landlord just not doing the basic of duties, shall we say. Like, for argument's sake, they're not upkeeping the property, they're not dealing with maintenance, they're not responding to tenants' inquiries. And I find it absolutely strange that landlords would do that. Have you ever come across the saying that it's cheaper to retain a client than it actually is to go off and try and attract new clients? And we have to take for granted, some of us, or should I say some landlords, take for granted that they think, oh, well, if this one leaves, another one will come along shortly. And that may be true in some locations, especially where the market's extremely buoyant. However, there is a cost attached to that. Marketing, time, effort, meetings, signing them up, etc., etc. And if you're using a letting agent, again, this can all take time, and more important, it's going to cost you, the landlord, money. And ultimately, again, let's go back to the most important point, that's a void. That void, in essence, is a loss to your business. Now, I feel like I'm being a little bit negative here. Admittedly, I was a little bit annoyed when I read the post. I was even more annoyed when I read the comments underneath. And the reason why I say that is because I've been doing this 30 years now. I've housed, let's say, tens of thousands of tenants, and I've always responded or returned back to my core fundamentals, which was, if we've got no tenants in our properties, we can't afford to sustain our lifestyle. We can't afford to maintain the properties. We can't afford to upkeep the mortgage payments, etc. So my core fundamental in my property business is, let's keep the tenants happy. Let's keep the customers happy. Let's keep the properties safe, well, clean, and ultimately this is going to keep tenants retained with us on a long-term basis. And I've got lots of tenants that have been with me 5, 10, 15, some even 20 years. And as a result, they've got no intention of moving because we treat them well. Now, the message that was put out there about the well-being in such heat, I thought was such a simple and almost like a thoughtful message. Some people turned it into a negative spin and said it was babysitting. Now, let's push this one step further. Now, what are you doing to stay in touch with your tenants? Because we've got systems and procedures in our office which also texts tenants on their birthday, because when we sign them up, we have that data. We know what their date of birth is, etc., etc. We text them happy birthday. And believe it or not, that's not actually a manual task. It's an automated task, which means that it's not actually taking us any time whatsoever. But the reality is that tenant on their birthday is going to receive a personalised message from their landlord to say, hope you have a great day, whatever you're doing, stay safe, but enjoy the day, and let's catch up when we next see you, and something along those lines. So every time we address the tenants, it's always by their first name. We also send out messages when it's extremely cold. So when we get into the bitter coldness of winter, we send out messages to tenants to tell them to keep safe, keep warm. If we're expecting a period of frost, we also ask them to keep the taps running to ensure that the pipes don't burst, or especially when we've got extreme wintry weather. And it's little things like this that really make it really interesting, and more importantly, lets the tenants know that it's not just a machine and we're not just greedy landlords, which the press kind of perceive us to be. We are people, we look after people, and it is a people business. And we like to think that we're doing a really good job, because ultimately we would not have had tenants that staying with us for such a long period of time. Now, moving on to my next point is that why don't we as landlords feel like we should maintain the properties? And I'm coming across lots of landlords at the moment, especially when we're taking them on like a rent-to-rent basis, where their properties are just poorly managed, poorly maintained, and ultimately keep asking the question, why do they do this? Is it because they've lost interest in the property? Is it because they feel like, okay, it's tenanted, we own the asset, and we're playing the long-term game where we're going to be paying capital appreciation? But then I keep coming back to the point that in order for it to appreciate capital, surely they've got to maintain the property. Now, I've just taken on a HMO. Admittedly, it's not in the best location of Wolverhampton, but it's certainly in a lettable location. And when I walked into the property, I saw magnolia, wood chip, really cheap carpet, property, stains all on the walls. And as soon as you walked in, you thought, man, this is a grim place to live. Almost like the last place you'd want to live. I've got a saying that you offer kennels, you attract dogs. And when the landlord approached me and said, Arsh, I don't really want to manage this property anymore, I kind of understand why. And the reason is that he's getting such a low caliber of tenant, and that is as a result of the low caliber of accommodation that he's offering. Now, ultimately, I thought, well, if he was to sell this property on the open market, he's not going to get the kind of level of sale or the price that he's going to want to achieve. Now, everyone wants to achieve the best price for their property, especially in such a rising market. Everyone's going to want to try and capitalize and get a great price. Now, if this guy has let this property run down so much, he's going to be pretty much, it wouldn't surprise me if he was actually in negative equity, which means that his investment cycle has actually gone in reverse. So I suppose this is just a point out there, and perhaps I'm just, talking to myself here, but maintain your properties, guys. It's really simple to do. Make sure that, even if you just get a handyman round once, a year, maybe once every 18 months, just to touch the place up, make sure it remains fresh. More importantly, by maintaining the property, you're going to get a high level of income. You're going to get a higher level of capital appreciation, because ultimately you don't want to do all this and then become a motivated seller at the end of it. Let's face it, if there's two properties on the same street, both producing the same level of income, or should I say both 4-bed HMOs, one's producing 16,000 a year, the other one's producing 20,000 a year. The 16,000 is only producing 16,000 because it's been run down and it's not producing as much as it should do. And then the second property is producing more money, but is in a much better condition. Ultimately, the one that's going to look more attractive is the second property. Now, as I've just said that, I'm thinking, well, in actual fact, I'd probably buy the first one because I know I can add value. But that's me as a buyer, not me as a seller. If it's me as a seller, I'd be deflated the fact that I've not made the most of the asset, because when I'm going into property, I'm looking at this as a long term. So not only am I making cash flow in the short term, but long term, I'm going to be making capital appreciation. And it's been a great investment vehicle all round. So, if you've got properties out there and they have, let's say, got to a stage where they are worn down, now may be the time where you actually address it and think, maybe I should put something back into it. And watch what happens to that property. Now, I've taken multiple properties off landlords all over the country where I've then gone in and added value simply by inspiring by design. When we're talking about inspired by design, it could be that we go off and get loads of soft furnishings in there, we repaint it, whether we, do something as simple as put a pattern on the wall, make it look good so that it looks great on pictures, make it so that it looks like a place that people want to live. And believe it or not, as a result, you'll be able to uplift the prices. As a result of doing that, you're producing a higher income on the property. As a result of producing a higher income, the property now commands a higher price. And it really is as simple as that. It's not rocket science. So I really hope that, for those that are listening, if you think that there's something wrong and you need to uplift it, now's the time. Maybe this is the kick up the backside that you need. There we have it, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed that. One thing I should say is that, guys, if you see someone out there putting their neck out there, don't be one of these people that literally try and shoot someone down on social media. Don't be a keyboard warrior. In actual fact, why don't you pat them on the back and say, you know what, well done, that's really thoughtful. And that's what I did. I went in and I said, you know what, guys, to be fair, I think he's done really well. And because in a world already filled with negativity, there's no need to add fuel to the fire. And I say that in the best possible light. And if you ever meet me, I'm the first person you wish everyone success. And I'd like to think that you do that. So, and the more that we do that, the better this place will be. And more importantly, we will remove the stigma of that property is a greedy industry. So guys, hopefully you've enjoyed that. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. As well as that, you want to connect with me on social media, I'm welcome for you guys to connect with me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and Clubhouse, all under the handle of Arsh. On that note, guys, as always, I wish you all to be safe, well, and happy. And I look forward to speaking to you all very soon. Thank you, and bye-bye.